Set by Stephen Carroll. Hello.
Hello, Jade.
We're going to start here in France. A key goal for President François Hollande has been missed.
Yeah, that's right. The president had been promising for months now that he would be able to reverse the trend of rising unemployment by the end of 2013. Well, new figures from the Labour Ministry out on Monday showed that he didn't manage to achieve that. In fact, the number of people in France out of work rose to a record level of 3.3 million. Now, as you can see, this is the evolution of how many people have been out of work in France over recent months. It was up 10,200 in January, in fact. The slightly more positive note, though, is the number of under 25s out of work actually fell during that period by about 2,000, but that's largely down to government-sponsored positions. Now, this blow comes as the French government tries to agree a new pact with businesses aimed at cutting jobs by reducing the amount of payroll taxes they have to pay. Let's listen to the reaction of the French Prime Minister to those latest jobless figures.
Stabilizing unemployment and declining youth unemployment are not enough. Obviously, it must go further, faster and more strongly.
Now, just before those figures were released, Airbus had given details of 1,400 job cuts that are to take place here in France. We'd learned back in December that the company was going to cut more than 5,000 jobs worldwide, but we didn't know where the axe was going to fall. Unions met with the company yesterday. They say that 2,500 jobs will go in Germany, those 1,400 here in France, 700 in Britain and 500 in Spain.
All right, to Argentina next, where the government's trying to keep their currency out of their economic crisis.
Yeah, that's right. The peso plunged against the dollar last week, changing hands on the official markets for 8 to 1 US dollar and even more on the black market. Now, the Argentinian government has had currency controls in place since 2011 in an effort to prevent capital flight from the country. It's lifted some of those controls to allow individuals to buy limited amounts of dollars, but there are fears that may push the inflation rate, hovering at around 30%, even higher. Jonathan Crane has the story.
These are nervous times for Argentina. In a bid to restore confidence, the government will allow private individuals, but not businesses, to buy up to $2,000 a month. The newly lowered 20% tax rate on dollar purchases will also be waived if the dollars are deposited in a bank account to keep the money flowing through the economy.
In Argentina, we have seen the hoarding of $143 billion over the last 10 years. As a result, we think the methodology implemented now is precisely what's required by small savers.
The peso's sudden fall brought back memories of the 2001 crisis, when the savings of millions were wiped out.
There are very high chances that a deep crisis will suddenly happen, which will impact economic activity and take us into recession.
That's mainly due to the country's inflation, which has soared to 25%. Argentines like Paulo Orchards are struggling to keep their businesses going.
If 1 month it was profitable and I made 10, whatever it may be, the next month, with the same amount of work, I will make 8. And then it will go on to negative numbers, which will mean that the shop or the restaurant is no longer prosperous. And you have no choice but to close the shutters.
Meanwhile, the Argentine government continues to deplete its own dollar reserves to support the peso, whose future remains uncertain.
Now, fears about emerging markets like Argentina had been weighing very heavily on the markets in recent days. In Asia, things are looking a little bit more stable after those dramatic falls we saw over the past couple of days. In India, the central bank has announced its third rate increase in 3 months in response to pressure on the rupee. That interest rate now rising to 10%. Shares in Mumbai, as you can see down there, by 0.2%. It was a generally positive start to the day here in Europe. Royal Bank of Scotland shares in London down almost 1% after warning they're facing losses of up to £8 billion, or almost €10 billion, for claims relating to the financial crisis. In Germany, Siemens shares are up over 1% after reporting a 15% jump in operating profit in the first quarter.
Right, and something that was perhaps weighing on the markets in the US was an announcement by Apple after Wall Street closed.
Yeah, the announcement came just after, in fact, Wall Street closed, but after hours trading, and Apple's shares were hit by these results, disappointing investors despite the company earning more than $57 billion in the first 3 months of its fiscal year. That's because they sold fewer iPhones than expected over the period. This has added to fears about the company's future profitability. and also putting more pressure on CEO Tim Cook to come up with new products to keep Apple's market share. Those shares fell by about 8% in after-hours trading, as I said. Just in terms of sales, interesting to note that the biggest growth was in China, where sales were up 29%, and that was even before Apple started selling the iPhone through China's largest mobile operator, China Mobile.
And Stephen, this comes as the smartphone market hits another milestone.
Yes, there are now more than 1 billion smartphones sold around the world last year, according to a new survey. The research from IDC shows that Samsung extended its lead over Apple to continue as number one in the smartphone market. They hold 31% of the market compared to Apple's 15%. Smartphone sales in general rose by more than a third last year, and in total smart models made up 55% of global phone sales.
All right, and just finally, it seems that no one's exempt from austerity measures, even the Queen.
Yes, poor old Queen. She's been told by British MPs that the royal household needs to cut costs and produce better budgets in the future. The Parliamentary Public Accounts Committee said that there was huge scope for savings on the annual £31 million, or around €39 million, of taxpayer funds that are given to the Queen to spend on official duties. Now, the committee particularly highlighted the number of repairs that need to be done on royal properties as a cause for concern. Committee Chairman Margaret Hodge pointed out that while the royals had cut costs by 16% since 2007, that was mainly due to new revenue coming in. She suggested that Buckingham Palace could be opened up to visitors while the Queen's not there, to perhaps earn them some more money.
I'm sure they would get a lot of extra dosh from people wanting to snoop around in there.
Certainly would.
All right, thanks to that, Stephen Carroll. Time now to take a look at what's grabbing headlines in the international